My name is Mark Speake. I am one of the owners of Lynchburg Stained Glass Company. Our company was started in 1983 by myself, my father, and my brother. My father had been in the stained glass business for about 60 years before he retired, but he's still around. But mainly we're run by myself and my brother. We both have been in stained glass about 40 years now. And 99% of our work is for churches. We've probably done over 3,000 churches in the past 40 years. We like doing churches the most. That's what we're good at. We have some of the best employees here. Most of our employees have been here for at least minimum 15 years. Some of them have been here for 30 years and they're still here, so that really gives us a good advantage when it comes to making the stained glass windows for the churches. We do work all over the United States. We've done stuff in Haiti, Africa, Puerto Rico, just all over really. Now we're going to go out and we're going to take a little tour of the studio, and we'll take you from start to finish and take you through the whole process.
Well, greetings from Lynchburg Stained Glass. My name is Rich Buswell. I'm one of the designers here at the studio, and I've been designing stained glass windows since 1976, a little longer than I really want to remember. But I've been having the pleasure of working with the committee here at Grace Presbyterian, and just wanted to walk you through a little bit about our process. We start off with the design development, which I've been doing with the committee. And once we have a design approved, such as the big south rose window, we then proceed through different steps from that design development to actually making the window. And the first step will be, after we have the design approved, to make a full-size drawing, which we call a cartoon. And so I'm going to roll that out for you now. This is 1/4 of the window, which you recognize from the sketch. And on this cartoon, if I can get it unwrapped here, is all the details necessary to make the window look like it's supposed to. So when you look at this, you'll see all the details for like the vine and the leaves and the accentuating the Celtic cross with the heavier line work here. And this will be helpful when it gets into the art department, when we actually paint the glass and create all that detail on the glass before it's put together. You also see some little numbers written on each piece here, and that is the actual number of the glass. The glass in this window will come from sources all over the world. There'll be glass from Germany, Poland, and the United States, all worked into this window, because we believe in using the best glass to make the window do what it needs to do for the church. It doesn't matter whether it came from down the street or from overseas. It's using the best possible glass to create the effect that we want. So after the full-size drawing is done, which again we call the cartoon, it comes over to Steve, and he's going to make 2 copies of it. One will be a working drawing, which will show every line, every lead line that's in the window. The second drawing is what we call the pattern drawing, and that's what you see Steve cutting out right now. Each piece of glass needs a pattern to be used for cutting it out. So he is taking the pattern drawing and cutting each piece of pattern of each piece of glass out. But he's using a special pair of scissors, because if you use regular scissors, the window pieces in the window would not fit. You have to allow for the thickness of the heart of the lead and a little bit of expansion area for each piece of glass. So if you look at the scissors that he's using, it is cutting out between each piece of glass this small thickness, and that allows for the heart of the lead. so that when the glass is put on the pattern drawing, it's slightly smaller, and so it will fit perfectly when it's put all together. So this is the next step in the process. Mike is taking the patterns that Steve has cut out, and by looking at the color number that's written on the pattern, he selects the glass, and now he's cutting each piece individually. Stained glass is done by hand, pretty much like it's been done for the last 800 years or so. Our equipment has improved somewhat, our tools are better, but the basic process is still a hand-done process of cutting each piece by hand, painting it by hand, firing it in a kiln, and putting it together with lead. Because we do windows in a great variety of styles to meet the needs of many different worship communities, we have glass from all over the world. We have glass from Germany, France, Poland, and several sources in the United States. Each one has its own qualities and particular attributes that make a window very interesting. So, for instance, we use hand-blown glass that comes from Germany that is in a wide variety of colors. And if you look through here, we have many different stacks of glass and numbered so that the cutters, as they're picking out the patterns, know which bin to go to select a sheet of glass to cut for the window. When picking out the glass for any window that we're doing, we have our sample rack here, which shows what we have in stock to select from to use in the window. Many times we also special order glass for a certain effect that we want or a color range. Those samples may not get into the window. This is just a portion of what we have in stock right at the moment. And each little sample of glass represents anywhere from 10 to 200, 300 square feet of glass that we have stored in different places in the studio. So each glass sample will have a number that will be put on the pattern drawing and the working drawing of the window as we're producing it, so that everybody knows what we want in the window to be cut. And if there's any mistakes, we can go back to that number and find out where we might have cut the wrong piece of glass. Now that the glass for the big south rose window at Grace Presbyterian has all been cut, the next step is to take it to the art department, where all this detail that you see on the full-size drawing will actually get painted onto the glass and fired in the kiln so that it's permanent, to create the effect that we were showing you in the sketch. If we weren't going to put anything on the glass, it would be very plain. So in order to create the vine look, for instance, in this window, we put all the detail on the cartoon that we want to eventually put on the glass. Right now it's very plain, it's just the color with a little bit of streakiness to it. But when it's painted, it's going to have all of this line work detail and shading that is shown on the cartoon. And that will translate onto the glass, be fired in, become permanent, and create all that interesting detail in the actual window. So the next step is go to the art department. So this is our next step to get the detail on the glass. Our painters, like Rebecca here, is actually doing some accentuated line work for a particular window that we're doing at the Lutheran Seminary in St. Louis. These windows are kind of a contemporary look, so we have expressive line work to bring out the details in the window. One of the talents of a really good artist is, after painting on the fine detail like this figure window, Anne goes back and touches it up with the reverse process. All art on the window is applied, and to lighten it up you have to remove it. So she's going back and just fine-tuning the very expressive line work that she's already painted on the glass. Now that Anne has finished applying the initial line work on these pieces, the next step is to have them fired in the kiln so it becomes permanent. So she's loading up one of our kiln trays, and the next step will be taking them into our kilns. which is the next room. In order for the artwork that we've seen being painted on the glass to be permanent, so it never washes off or fades away, the paint, which is specially formulated, is fired into the glass. In order to get that glass hot enough, we have to fire it a little bit before it gets to its melting point, about 1250 degrees. So these kilns are all been programmed to fire at the temperature that the paint needs. And the tray gets loaded, the glass goes in, it comes up to temperature, and then it's slowly cooled down. We can't let the glass cool down fast or it becomes very brittle. So it's a slow process. As it slowly cools off, we roll it from one cooling area to another until it becomes cool enough to touch and take out of the kiln tray.
So once the windows are painted, they're put back on the tables and the patterns and rolled over to the glazing department where they lead them together with lead. All the pieces are laid back down on these patterns so they know where to go. Then on the patterns we have indications of the different sizes leads and different widths. There's about 5 different widths of lead that comes in. So once it comes here, we'll go over here to where she's putting it together. Once it comes off the painting, it comes to the glazing part to where she leads it together. The lead is pretty malleable. It bends easily. She cuts and fits each piece in. She'll put a piece in and temporarily tack a nail to hold it in place until she gets the next piece in. And she'll just do that all the way up until she gets to the top. So once it's together, everything has to be soldered. And what she's doing now is putting on the flux on each joint. That allows the solder to adhere to the lead. The solder is 60-40, 60 lead, 40-10. Gets up to about 800 degrees to melt it. And she just goes along and solders every joint where the joints meet. And that's done on both sides. This one window probably has 400 solder joints on it, on each side. So she'll do it here, then the whole thing will get flipped over and she'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And once it's to that stage, it goes to the waterproofing department. Now we're going into the waterproofing department where we apply the waterproofing seal that we make up so the windows are more rigid and don't leak water. So now he's putting in the waterproofing putty that we use to seal up the windows, and it also makes them a lot more rigid. The putty that we use, it's a 100-year-old recipe that we've been making for 40 years of my life. But this putty goes underneath all these flanges and he pushes it all in. It also does a good job at cleaning up from the oleic acid that we use to do the soldering. Once that's done, he puts on this whiting. Show him how you scrub it, Robert. Then he brushes with the calcium carbonate whiting. That gets all the grease off of it, it dries up the putty, and that gets done on both sides as well. So once the windows are waterproofed, the last and final step is to solder on the support brace bars. These are 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch galvanized steel bars that go across the window. Rule of thumb is every 12 to 18 inches. And once the windows are on the job site, they actually get secured to the jambs on these ends where we slide the bar clips on. And that's the last thing that gets done in the studio. From here it goes on the truck. Hope you enjoyed the tour, and we look forward to working with you on your new church. And if there's anything that we can do to facilitate that during the process, please let us know. And we welcome anybody from Grace to come up and be a part of it. Thank you.